Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
All right. Damon West is a fascinating guy. He is a college professor. He is an internationally known keynote speaker. He is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author 3 times over. And, oh, by the way, he was once sentenced to 65 years in a Texas prison. If you look into Damon West, you will see why he is one of the most in-demand speakers in the world. And his autobiography I have not read, but his autobiography, The Change Agent, How a Former College QB Sentenced to Life in Prison Transformed His World, is one of the best reviewed autobiographies that I've ever encountered. And believe it or not, Damon may have some insight into, of all things, the Kennedy assassination. Damon West, I want to welcome you to the program. Thanks for coming on.
Frank, man, I love the introduction, brother. How are you?
I am doing great, and I appreciate you staying up late for us. Damon, I think a lot of the audience may not know your story. Let's give a little bit of your background. For starters, how'd you wind up in prison? What happened?
Yeah, I think the best place to start is substance abuse, man. I had back in 2004, I was living in Dallas. I was a stockbroker. I had everything going for me in life, Frank. I mean, like, it was like I was on top of the world. I had been a Division I starting quarterback about 10 years prior at the University of North Texas. Got injured. Career was over short. But I had all the best jobs, man. I worked in Congress. I worked, like I said, I was working for UBS in Dallas, United Bank of Switzerland, as a broker. But that back in 2004, another broker introduced me to meth one day at work. I was passed out asleep at work. He's like, hey, man, come to the parking garage. I got something to pick you up. And from the minute I tried meth, I was instantly hooked. And I started giving away everything for that drug because really, Frank, that's what addicts do. We give things away. Addicts give up their goals to meet their behaviors. That's a definition of addiction. 18 months later, I'm living on the streets of Dallas. My job, my home, my car, everything's gone. I become a criminal. And then I become the quarterback all over again, this time of a very bad team. I became the leader of a bunch of other meth addicts breaking into houses all over Dallas. They called these burglaries the Uptown Burglaries. They called me the Uptown Burglar. In 2008, a Dallas SWAT team finally gets on to me, and they take me down. In 2009, I go to a trial, a RICO trial in Dallas, organized crime. The jury heard evidence for 6 days, overwhelming evidence of my guilt. And at the end of that 6-day trial, they come back in 10 minutes with their verdict. I mean, you know, Frank, when the jury's gone for 10 minutes, you know you're in trouble.
Right.
And the judge read my sentence out loud, 65 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Or as they say in prison, 6 dimes and a nickel. Every 10 years is a dime, every 5 is a nickel. So I got 6 dimes and a nickel. And it was in that period of time between when I got sentenced to life in prison, because in Texas, 65 years is life. When I got sentenced to life in prison and when the prison bus was going to pick me up, I run into this old black Muslim guy in Dallas County Jail. This encounter is like just crazy. This old guy shares with me the story of the coffee bean. He said, if you're going to turn this thing around, here's how you're going to do it. You have to be like a coffee bean. He said, imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. You get 3 choices. You can be like a carrot that goes in hard but becomes soft. An egg that goes in soft but becomes hard in the boiling water. or you can be like a coffee bean that changes the pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. He said the coffee bean is the change agent. And if you want to turn this thing around, you've got to change the prison around you. And that's what he said. The last words he ever said to me in 2009 when the prison bus came to pick me up, he said, be a coffee bean. And that's what I did, Frank. I transformed myself inside of one of the most difficult environments on earth, a Texas level 5 maximum security prison. And the prison I went to, the Mark Stiles unit, it's one of the toughest prisons in Texas. Actually, it's one of the toughest prisons in America. And like you said from my introduction, I can tell you a lot about tough prisons in America because since I got out of prison, I went back to school, got a master's degree in criminal justice, and became a professor at the University of Houston downtown, teaching a class called Prisons in America. So I'm the only professor on the planet to teach a prisons class who lived in prison. Stiles.
I love that. I love that. I love everything about that story. So, obviously, Damon, we're not talking to you in prison right now. You didn't do 65 years. How'd you get out?
I escaped. I'm just kidding. No, no, they let me go. What happened is this, Frank. I transformed myself so thoroughly inside that place. I became that coffee bean. The parole board comes to see me in 2015. And the reason why I'm up for parole is because my crimes were non-aggravated, meaning that no one was ever hurt during my crimes. My crimes were all property crimes. No one was ever even home during any of the burglaries. So because I was a nonviolent offender, I was eligible for early parole. And the parole board came to see me in 2015. They said, you didn't just transform yourself inside this prison, you transformed the entire prison around you. And they let me go on November 16th, 2015. Now, I'm not free. So you're not talking to a free man. I may be out in the free world, but I'm on parole until the year 2073 in the state of Texas.
All right, so you got a ways to go.
A little bit more time. Well, 48 more years.
Yeah, hopefully you're eating right.
Yeah, but every day that I wake up and my feet don't hit the cold concrete floor of the prison cell is a day that I'm winning, Frank. I've got a tremendous perspective on life that is unshakable. I don't have any bad days. My worst day out here is better than my best day in prison. So that's the perspective I go out living life with. And when I got out, I started sharing my story and started sharing the message of the coffee bean and just caught on and wrote this book in 2019 called The Coffee Bean with John Gordon. And the book took off because the book came out right before the world became a pot of boiling water with the COVID pandemic. So everybody was searching for the right message in 2020, 2021. And that's when so many people discovered the coffee bean guy, Damon West. And my life just took off. And the more books started coming out. But, I wanted to like put a really good book out there that would tell my whole life story and gave all the principles I live my life by. And that's what we're talking about today, 6 Dimes and a Nickel, which comes out. It's out on Amazon right now. And that's the story we're going to talk about a guy that I met when I was serving life in prison named J.T. Goad. Yeah, before we get to J.T. Goad and 6 Dimes and a Nickel, which I want to talk about, by the way, 31 minutes after the hour, this is The Other Side of Midnight. We're talking with Damon West. Damon, we have a lot of people listening. First of all, we have a lot of people listening in prison right now, all over the country, federal prisons, state prisons, you name it. And there's some of our best listeners, and a lot of them, and I know some of them are, in there for very heinous crimes. A lot of them seem like great guys, but we also have a lot of people listening who view people that are in prison, and I'm not talking about the wrongfully convicted, but are in prison for crimes as good riddance. They're not worthy of accommodations for things like comfort. I'll bring up a certain issue when it comes to how prisoners are treated or inmates are treated. And repeatedly, the response that I hear from people is, who cares? Why should we spend money on that? Why should we care about that? There's plenty of people outside in the free world that have never done anything wrong and have lived totally honest lives, and they're struggling to pay their bills and get health care. And I'm worried about those guys before I'm worried about the prisoners. Speak to both of those audiences. One, say a word to the folks listening in prison about how they can get through prison with a positive attitude, and speak to the people outside of prison who may view people in prison as, hey, you made your choice, you get what you get. Yeah, great. No, I can talk to both those audiences, and for everybody listening that's in prison, you know that I know exactly what you're going through right now. I have lived where you've lived. I've sat there on the radio at night listening to shows like Frank's. And so I totally understand the situation you're in. But let me tell you something. You got to maintain hope. Hope is the thing you have to have. The movie Shawshank Redemption. You ever seen the movie Shawshank, Frank?
Oh, please. It's a movie that whenever it's on, I have to watch it. If I see it's on TV, I have to stop and watch it. I love it.
Right. You're scrolling through the channels. Even if I'm watching a football game and I see Shawshank's on, I'll stop watching the football game. The movie Shawshank Redemption is about hope. And it's not even about the character you may think it's about. It's not about Andy Dufresne. It's not about the innocent guy that goes to prison for 19 years and tunnels through a wall and swims through sewage to get to his freedom. The story, the Shawshank Redemption, the movie is about a character named Red. It's about Morgan Freeman's character the whole time. I'll tell you why it's about Red. Red has no hope. And the first time you meet him in the movie, remember, he gets denied parole. He's a dead man walking. The guys in prison he hangs out with, no hope. All they do is wager on who's going to break on the prison bus first. Brooks. Remember Brooks Hadlin, Frank?
Of course.
The old man.
Yeah.
Brooks makes parole after 50 years. But Brooks lasts about 2 weeks in the free world. He hangs himself. He writes a letter back to the boys in Shawshank, tells them what he did and why he did it. And as Andy read that letter out to the men in Shawshank prison, every man in Shawshank understood why Brooks did what he did because they all had the same hopeless mindset as Brooks. But it's Red, our narrator. So Red explains it for us. He says, Andy, I wouldn't make it out either, Andy. I'm an institutional man now. Red said the words out loud for you to truly understand. Red said hope is a dangerous thing. Imagine if you live in a world where you believe hope is dangerous. And if you're listening out there right now and you're one of those people like Red where you believe hope is dangerous, you can't do that. And then that's what Andy tells Red. Andy says, Red, hope is a good thing. You know, and he tells Red, get busy living or get busy dying. And in the end of the movie, when Red finally gets out of prison, we don't know if Red's going to make it right. He walks by the pawn shop, the guns are in the window, stays in the same room that Brooks hung himself in, but Red makes it to that rock wall that Andy told him to go to. Remember the rock wall, Frank?
Oh, yeah.
And he finds the letter that Andy left behind, and in that letter were the words that Red needed to hear when Andy said, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. Y'all, if you're listening to this in prison, the next time Shawshank comes on the Dayroom TV, I want you to watch the last scene, just the last scene. Remember the last scene on the beach in Mexico, Frank?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't want you to give anything away for people that haven't seen it, but for people that have seen it, they know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. So Z Watson Mexico. That's what kept Andy Dufresne alive for 19 years. Andy could always see himself on that beach one day. In the darkest of times, the worst of places, he could always see himself on that beach working on his boat. And that's something we all have the power to do, no matter where you are, whether you're sitting in prison cell listening to this or you're in the prison of your mind out here in the free world somewhere. See yourself in a better place. See yourself succeeding one day. Go back and watch the last scene. Listen to the dialogue of the character named Red at the end of the movie versus the dialogue of the character named Red at the beginning of the movie. Every single sentence that Red says in this last piece of dialogue starts off with two words, I hope. And he tells you, I hope I make it across the border. I hope I see my friend again so I can shake his hand. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it was in my dreams. I hope. That's what I'm telling you. If you're sitting in a prison cell listening to this right now, don't ever give up on this thing called hope because it's real. It's not a dangerous thing. It's the main thing. You have to have hope. Now, if you're listening to this right now and you're one of the people Frank talked about that thinks that good riddance, we throw people in prison, lock them up, and throw them away. It's a very short-sighted mindset of what the reality is to the world. The reality is the world that there's over 3 million people incarcerated right now in America, and 95% of these people are getting out one day. Let me repeat that. 95% of the people that are incarcerated will get out of prison one day. These people are going to be walking down your street one day. They're going to be pumping gas next to you one day. They're going to be in the line at Walmart next to your family. You want these people to have the best opportunity possible to turn their life around. You want the tools in there necessary inside these institutions for them to become the best version of themselves. Because when they do get out, you want them to have opportunity. That's the thing about having a big criminal justice system. We have a massive criminal justice system in America, and that comes with some strings attached, Frank. If you want to have a system like that, you want to lock people up, and I understand it. I'm a law and order kind of guy. Hey, listen, I'm the kind of guy that whenever I got out of prison, I went and found the SWAT team that took me down, and I buy Dallas SWAT their equipment now. I do things like that and donate because they saved my life. I work with law enforcement now. Law enforcement's a great thing. One of the worst slogans I've ever heard, Frank, was defund the police. Right. Dumbest thing I've ever heard. I lived in a world where there's no police. It's called prison. You don't want to be in a place where there's no cops to call. So We have to figure out how we're going to work within the system to transform the lives in there. The biggest obstacle with people reforming themselves in prison is substance abuse. That's one of the biggest reasons people are in prison. 80% of the people locked up have substance abuse issues. We need to find more programs that can get these people into recovery. Now, that's going to also be up to the inmate. The inmate that's listening to this or the inmate that's in prison that has substance abuse issues, while you're in prison right now, work on yourself. A successful rehabilitation, a successful reentry back into society begins the first day you walk into prison. And if you didn't start that reentry program when you got to prison the first day, start today. Pick it up, start working on yourself, transform yourself. But recovery is key, Frank, because without a program recovery, an addict will likely go back out into their addiction. I'll give you an example. In my life, I work a 12-step program recovery every day. I go to my meetings every week. I go to AA meetings. I don't represent AA, but that's the recovery program I'm in. I got a sponsor. I work my steps. I go through it. When I have, thoughts going through my head, I bounce them off my sponsor. A program recovery gives us tools, and any addict needs a program recovery. The biggest problem I see inside the prison system is that people are not working on their addiction. And they go in there and they say, hey, look, I stayed sober for all these years I was in prison. I was in prison 7 years, 3 months. I'm sober the whole time. Now, some people go to prison, they keep doing the drugs. They keep drinking in there because you can get anything you want inside of a prison. Man, you can do anything but drive a car inside of a prison. But we have to start working on how we turn this thing around. Another thing I would tell people out there is, we call ourselves a Christian nation. And I get it. I'm a Christian too. And I believe anybody can believe anything they want, by the way. In my program recovery, you can pick whatever you want to believe in. But I'm going to say this. If someone tells me they're a Christian, I don't even hear them anymore. I watch them. Because your actions speak so loud, I cannot hear what you're saying. You want me to believe you're a Christian? Good. Show me love. Show me mercy. Show me compassion. Show me these things like empathy. Show me the stuff that shows up in red ink in the New Testament. And when someone wrongs you, show me that stuff in red ink that says, let he without sin cast the first stone. I don't listen to people anymore when they tell me they're a Christian, Frank. I watch what they do. That tells me if you're a Christian.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your real ID at tsa.gov/real ID. That's tsa.gov/real ID, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff.
Well said. And if folks are just tuning in, we're talking with Damon West. He is the author of a new book called 6 Dimes and a Nickel, Life Lessons to Empower Change. All right, Damon, we could do an hour, I think, just on prison life, but the Kennedy assassination is once again in the news because of the decision to release these documents that President Trump made, and a lot of people are looking again at the Kennedy assassination. In your book, you reveal some pretty explosive claims from your former cellmate, who apparently was a guy that was pretty connected to the Dallas criminal underworld. Give us the basics. Who was this guy? What did he tell you?
Man, this is JT Goad. Let me tell you something. I met JT Goad when I was serving life in prison. He wasn't my cellmate, Frank, but he was in the same cell block. So we live in the same section
Gotcha.
there. We see each other every day. We're in the same pod. It's close, but it's not a cellmate. But I just wanted to correct that. So JT was an old man when I met him. But he was one of those people, by the way, Frank, that had given his life to Christ. This guy walked the talk. He was a born-again Christian. I'd see him at church. He'd be at church every Saturday on the front row, praising the Lord, and just a neat guy. But listen, he wasn't always this Christian guy. JT told me, as we got to know each other, JT took a liking to me because I was an organized crime guy from Dallas. He was an organized crime guy from Dallas. He always said us organized crime guys got to stick together. And that didn't really bother me, man, because that aligned me with one of the most respected guys in the joint. JT walked around, and people feared this guy. He was a really interesting guy. He was neat. He was funny. He was a spiritual guy. He was scary, but he was all these things. And JT and I got pretty close in there. And JT started telling me more stories about his days when he ran around the Dallas mob scene in the early 60s. So obviously, Frank, I mean, I'm doing the math on it. I'm not a dumb guy. I'm a student of history. I go to prison. I'm sober. I'm like a sponge soaking stuff up. And I asked JT, what all do you know about the JFK assassination? He corrected me. He said, you mean the JFK hit? I'm like, all right. What do you know what the JFK hit? So first of all, he told me it was a mob hit. And he told me specifically he felt like it was the Chicago mob that did it. And everything I tell you from this point on, these are coming quotes from JT. So this is not my story. This is a JT story. And I'm going around. I put JT's story in the book, Frank, because I don't know what's real and what's not. I don't know. I mean, this trove of information that just got released, I started plugging all the stuff JT told me into AI to see if it shows up in there. And most of this stuff doesn't show up. Chicago mob shows up every now and then. But what JT told me doesn't show up. And here's one of the reasons why you're about to hear it never shows up. JT was so involved at a granular level in Dallas that the Warren Commission report and all these files, these are dealing with macro issues like the CIA, Castro, Cuba. They're dealing with the FBI, LBJ. That's such a big level investigation. JT's world was very granular. JT was in the Dallas mob in the early 60s, and he ran around with characters like Joe and Sam Campisi, two guys that he said, ran a front for the mob at their little Italian restaurant called The Egyptian in Dallas on Mockingbird Lane. He told me a story about J.D. Tippit. Do you remember J.D. Tippit and the whole Kennedy thing?
Of course. He was the officer that was killed.
Right. So after Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly kills Oswald, 45 minutes later, J.D. Tippit, a Dallas police officer, is shot in the Oak Cliff neighborhood of Dallas, right by where Lee Harvey Oswald's boarding house was. JT told me that in that time, the cops worked for the mob. In fact, he said the mob, he said they ran around with impunity in the city of Dallas. He said we had the cops under our thumb. They worked for us. He said one of the best cops they had on the take back then was an officer named J.D. Tippit, and I knew the name immediately when he said it. He gave me a story. He said, man, my crew and I, we were hitting a Florsheim shoe warehouse in the early 60s. This is before Kennedy got killed. He said, we're hitting a Florsheim shoe warehouse. He said, a cop car rolls up, lights on, sirens blaring. He said, my guys scatter, but I don't scatter because I see who's behind the wheel. It's Tippit. He goes up to the window of the cop car, knocks on the window. The cop rolls the window down. He said, I make some small talk with Tippit. Then I asked Tippit what size shoe he wears. He tells me. And I told my crew, load up his car with every shoe you got in this size. He said, Damon, we must have loaded 50 boxes of shoes up in Tippit's car. And he took off and drove away. This time, no lights, no siren, right? So JT told me he believes that J.D. Tippit was sent by Ruby and the mob to kill Lee Harvey Oswald that day,
Really?
to tie up the loose. Oh, yeah. He said that there was no doubt in his mind. He said they would have known each other through Ruby at the Carousel Club, too. Jack Ruby had a club called the Carousel Club, a burlesque club, like a strip club, basically. And everybody hung out there. But he said Tippit would have known Oswald by that point. And he said Tippit was sent to kill Lee Harvey Oswald. That's his opinion of it from the inside where he was. Now, he said, and I asked him about Lee Harvey Oswald. Was Lee Harvey Oswald a lone gunman? He said, absolutely not. He said there were several hitmen that day. He said by his estimation, he feels like there were 4 or 5 guys shooting that day. But he said, I know for sure one of the other shooters. And I'm like, who was it? He said it was Charles Harrelson was one of the shooters. Charles Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson's father.
Woody Harrelson's father. You got it, brother. Infamous hitman in Texas. He actually died in a federal prison in the early 2000s when he hit this federal judge. He assassinated a federal judge in 1979 in San Antonio, Texas. He and Charlie were good friends. In fact, JT says, he says, I run into Charlie in a bar in Dallas, November 21st, 1963, the day before Kennedy's shot. And he said, I was surprised to see Charlie there. he said that the word came out of about a week before the Kennedy assassination. The word came out from all the mob bosses. JT's job was running girls, guns, and drugs for the mob. So JT's boss that he worked for said, get all the girls off the street. Something big is going down. So JT does what he's told. He pulls all the girls off the street. So he's at a bar the day before Kennedy gets shot. He runs into Charles Harrelson. He's a little surprised to see Charlie there because Charlie doesn't live in Dallas. Well, he starts making some small talk with Charlie. They're friends. Hey, Charlie, what are you doing in town? Charlie told JT, he said, I'm here on business, JT. JT said that told me all I needed to hear because Charlie's business was killing people. And if Charlie was here on business, he was here to kill somebody. And it's just too ironic that the only person that gets killed in Dallas the next day is the President of the United States because there's no crime going on in Dallas that day. So JT told me he told me he was also with Charles Harrelson. Get this, Frank. He said in 1979, right before he goes to kill the federal judge, JT now runs the mob out of East Texas in 1979. He's got a club in Cherokee County, Texas. And he said, that Charlie was in there at the bar a few days before he kills that federal judge. So it's like JT was there in history twice before Charles Harrelson killed somebody. JT told me a story. This is the big story that's in the book because JT had to have his own chapter in the book, Frank. I couldn't tell my whole story and tell JT's story in the middle of it because JT's such a fascinating character. In fact, like I say in the book, 6 Dimes and a Nickel, JT is the most fascinating person I ran into the entire time I was in prison. I mean, this guy was fascinating. He was there for so much history. But Americans, we love true crime in prison. We just love it. I mean, and I know this because I go around sharing my story all over the world. I share the story of the coffee bean, but a lot of times I'm telling that story from my viewpoint inside of a prison because people can't go to prison. You know, prison's a place it's interesting, it's scary, but the closest we'll ever get, hopefully, is living vicariously through someone like me who tells you about prison. So, but we really love mob stories in America. People are fascinated with the American mob. So JT tells me a story about why he knows that the Dallas mob, that the Chicago mob orders the hit on Kennedy. And I told JT, I said, JT, there's no way I can retell the story without you writing this down. I said, will you write this story down? Will you write me a letter? And in this letter, tell the story. JT said, I'll do it under one condition. You can't show their letter until I'm dead. Well, JT passed away in prison peacefully on February 21st, 2023. So JT's been dead a little over 2 years now. And this book was the first opportunity I've ever had to tell JT's story. And this is the letter that's included in the back of the book, and it's called JT's Story. So JT told me this is right after the Kennedy assassination, day after, right? And he said he's running the girls again. They're back on the streets working. One of the girls that he's with calls him up and says, JT, got an emergency, got to talk to you. So he goes and talks to the girl. That girl's got this other girl at her house. And this other girl, one of the girls that works for the mob, she says, JT, one of my good friends is in trouble. So JT's like, tell me about your friend. She said her friend was a burlesque queen for Ruby, which means she's one of the big burlesque dancers there. And she was getting ready to quit the life, meaning that she had found an airline pilot she was going to marry. So she was going up to the Carousel Club that night, and she was going to clean out her locker and pack all of her stuff and go and quietly leave. But she was there after hours. And she said that whenever she got up to leave, she realized that everybody was gone. And the only way out of there, you go at the end of this hallway is Jack Ruby's office. And then there's a long set of stairs right past his office that go to the exit door. And he said that this girl is telling the story. She says, so my friend is walking in the hallway very quietly, and Ruby's door is open. And she can hear two people screaming at each other. One of them is Jack Ruby. The other one is Frank Costello, the boss of the New York mob. And the New York and Chicago mob is always in there with Ruby because really Chicago is the one that put Ruby on the map in Dallas.
Yeah.
And,
I'm sorry. It's such a fascinating story, and I have so many questions based on what you said. Damon, you got to come back. Let's do a full hour one day next week because I have a boatload of questions based on everything you just said, but I'm out of time. Come back next week. Can we plan for it?
Yeah, we can definitely try to do it. I got a busy schedule. I'm on the
I
road
hear
a
you.
lot next week.
I hear
Frank,
you.
one thing I just want to plug before we go is that mob boss in the office at night tells Jack Ruby you're going to kill Oswald in Dallas City Jail, and obviously Ruby doesn't want to do it because he knows it's going to be the end of his life one way or another. They're going to kill him, put him in prison, but he tells you got to do it. We put you here 25 years ago. You're our guy to do it. They know you in Dallas. That's why Ruby goes to kill Oswald.
I have a lot of questions, and whenever you're up for coming back on the show, I want to ask you them. Damon West, if people want to check out the book, it's 6 dimes and a nickel. You could also check out Damon's website at damonwest.com. If there's time,
DamonWest.org.
DamonWest.org. Thank you. DAMON West.org. Straight ahead.